Let's move on from our switch and look at building out this album info card. So I'm going to use the Framer feature called Stacks to handle the layout for this. Normally you'd think of using a stack for building a uniform list of objects, sort of like this list of cards we have. And in fact, we will use a stack for that. But you can also combine multiple nested stacks to create some more complex layouts like this individual card view. So let's look at an example of how I'm going to build this. I'm going to create a horizontal stack with just 2 items. On the left, I'll have a slot for my album artwork, and on the right, I'll have a larger area for the album info. And then I'll put another vertical stack inside this larger area. So each item in this vertical stack will contain one of these lines of information in my album card. The benefit of building this with stacks instead of just positioning everything with pixel values is that if the size of one of these elements changes or if one of these elements goes away, the rest of the stack automatically adjusts the layout to compensate. So let's start building this. I'm going to create a new component in a new file called album. I'll delete most of the template code that Framer gives me, and my component function will return a white background frame with rounded corners as the base level element. I'll set the width to 100%, so this card will stretch or shrink to fill different screen sizes, because we want this to be able to work on an iPhone X or an iPhone 8 without things getting cropped. And I'll set the height to auto, so it will grow to just the size needed to hold whatever the size of the content is that we put inside. I'll give it a 1 pixel border, and I'll remember to spread the props into this frame, so it will automatically receive any props that get passed into this component. Now I can find that component in my components list and drag it out onto my canvas so I can get a preview of it as I build. Now the first child inside this frame will be our horizontal stack. So I can create a stack element and set the direction property to horizontal. I'm getting an error here for stack because I have to remember to import that element from the Framer library so that this code knows what component to use when I say to make a stack. So I can just add that to my existing import statement. My error goes away. And to add elements to my stack, I can just create children elements inside this stack tag. So whatever tags I put inside here will be like the objects that you would drag into a stack if you were setting this up on the canvas. So to start, I'll just make a square frame to hold my cover image. Now, I can already tell that things aren't going quite right. I'm going to set the background of my stack to red temporarily just so I can see the stack. It makes it easier to tell what's going on. So the first thing I want to fix is that my album cover is showing up vertically centered in this stack, and I want it to align to the top. So I can set the alignment property on my stack to fix that. So the alignment property defines how things should align on the axis opposite to the direction of the stack. So since this is a horizontal stack, the alignment defines how things should align on the vertical axis. And since you use this same alignment property to control alignment for a horizontal or for a vertical stack, the values that you set on this can seem kind of weird. So instead of specifying top and bottom or left and right, I'm going to specify start and end. So in this case, start will align my element to the top, and end will align it to the bottom. I want mine to align to the top, so I'm going to use start. The next problem I want to fix is to make this stack the full width of the card that it's inside. That's easy to do. I just need to set the width to 100%. Now I could also set the height to 100% to make it fill the height of the card, But actually what I want to happen when I put these cards into the list is that this stack will size to fit the height of the content inside it, and then the background frame will size to fit the height of the stack. So to make that work, I'm going to set the height of my stack to auto, just like I did for the background frame. And I don't want everything to be crammed up into the corner like this. I want everything in the stack to have a nice even padding between the edges of the background frame and the contents of the stack. So I'll just set the padding to 16. And now I can get rid of this red background on the stack. And notice this isn't doing what I just said I wanted it to do. It's not sizing the outer frame to fit the height of the stack. And that's because since I drug this component out onto the canvas, I've manually set the width and the height by sizing this bounding box. So that auto height property isn't working. But it will work later once we've put this into the list of albums. For now, you'll just have to trust me that height auto is what we want here. Now let's add that second stack for the album info. I'll do that by adding another stack tag inside my outer stack. This stack will be vertical. Vertical is the default direction for a stack, so I don't even need to specify that. And I'm just going to add some blank frames inside this for now so we can start to visualize the layout. Again, I'll make it temporarily red so we can see the stack. So again, my items are aligning center by default, which is not what I want. So again, I need to use the alignment property to get these elements to align. Remember, alignment controls the axis opposite of the direction of the stack. So since this is a vertical stack, alignment controls the horizontal alignment, which means in this case, start will align things to the left, and end will align elements to the right. I want mine to be left aligned, so I'll use start. I want the space between these elements to be a little bit tighter, so I can change the size of the gap between elements by using a property called gap. And once again, I want the height of my stack to fit the height of the content inside it, so I will set the height to auto, just like I did for my outer stack and for my background frame. Remember, you can always look up the properties available for the stack element in the Framer documentation. That's a totally normal thing to do, and you'll probably need to do it many, many times until you start to learn the property names and commit them to memory. Now notice this stack isn't quite filling up the remaining space over here on the right. And this is sort of a tricky problem because the stack is trying to fit itself to the size of the content, but then we have content that might want to stretch to fill the maximum size of the stack. And if that content is text, which it will be in this case, that text will need to wrap when it hits the maximum size of the stack. So we sort of have two elements competing to try to size themselves to each other. To find a solution to this, it's helpful to know that this stack component is based on a CSS feature called Flexbox. So I'm not going to get into all the details of Flexbox. You can look that up online if you want to learn about it. But the solution to this problem is to tell the outer stack that we want this item to flex to fill the available space. So I can do that by setting a flex property on the style object for this inner stack. If this doesn't quite make sense to you, it's probably because I didn't explain it at all, and I'm sort of purposely glossing over it because I don't think it's something we need to worry too much about at this point. Again, if you're curious, you can look up CSS Flexbox and learn all about how that works. For now, just know we can add this line to our inner stack, and that will tell it to flex to fill the available space in the background container. Anyway, now if I remove my red background, I can see my layout is coming along nicely. So in this component, we used two stacks, one nested inside the other, to create a flexible layout for our card content. And we'll start adding that content in the next video.